It's been a crazy week. Honestly, I am so uninformed about these. This is one of those things that
Same.
like I could barely even start diving into before I talk to you. So I actually wanted to hear it from your perspective. So I'm super excited about this. It's been on the airwaves. We're talking leaks, Pentagon leaks. I want you to take it away and tell us what's going on.
All right, shit. I'm gonna try to break it down as best I can, because truth be told, these things they are on the airwaves, but they're not being talked about in the ways that a lot of people feel they need to be talked about, which is the substance of these leaks. So let's just dive into it. One, Ukraine is fucking out of bullets. They got no bullets. They need more bullets. They've been asking for bullets for a little while. They've got no bullets.
Okay.
Two, Zelensky is saying if he gets those long-range missiles, he really wants to bomb the heart of Russia.
What is the heart of Russia? Moscow?
And we know that.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, just like in the mainland of Russia. He wants to go over the border and start bombing Russia. We know that because it turns out the U.S. is spying on Zelensky.
With balloons.
Which you might assume, but we're spying on his ass. Additionally, we're trying to get him these bullets. We have interest in getting him these missiles. That's been part of the debate on the news. Before this leak came out, we kind of went mum on it since. But we've been trying to get them more weaponry from the Koreans, and we found out the Koreans don't really want to sell to us because they're like, motherfuckers, these are all going to Ukraine. And we know that they don't want to sell it to us because we're also spying on the Koreans. And we're wiretapping those motherfuckers. We're wiretapping their presidential office.
Holy shit, we wiretapped their presidential office. We also
tried to trick Israel into selling us weapons. And we said, if we could trick Israel and say this is an anti-Iran move, then we need to get these weapon systems from Israel and send them to Ukraine. So really specific. Now, the crazy thing is, we know all of this from a bunch of official source documents that were placed on a 12-person Minecraft Discord server from some kid who does not give a fuck.
A kid? A child?
21 years old. He's 21.
Oh, the selfie guy?
He might be. Yeah, there's a selfie of him going around, I think. Congressman Jack Teixeira. This guy's 21. He likes his memes. He's on a Minecraft server. They like. Huh?
He's. Did you say Congress? What?
No, he's an airman. He's an airman in the military.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said congressman.
Yeah. No. So, here's the thing. We don't know how he got his hands on these documents. Maybe he just had like some clearance based off of his job, but it seems like these are secrets that would be for the Joint Chief of Staff. So it's like a little bit out of his level. So it's kind of weird that he has them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
But he had this little group on Minecraft with his boys. He's the oldest person in this entire group. There's only 12 of them, keep in mind.
That's so funny. He's just playing with like his little cousins.
He's talking with like 16, 17-year-old boys. And he's just saying like, man, I got some problems with the U.S. government, how they handled Waco. It's just, he's got issues with the U.S. government. He's like, I just wish Russia and Ukraine could make peace. He's anti-war. And he would try to win these arguments. He tried to win these debates with his friends. And so he's like, yo, bro, I'm going to show you the truth. I know from my job. They're like, prove it, bro. He's like, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove it. And so he, over the course of the last few months, he uploaded 350 documents onto this Minecraft server. Right? Onto this Discord. And, yeah, and there they sat for the longest time. It was just him winning arguments. They called him the OG. They're like, oh, this guy's a bro. He's coming through with the truth. And so the thing is, the story kind of blew up because someone took them and put them on other servers, and eventually they made their way to this bigger channel called Donbas Devushka, which is
pause real quick. What do you mean how they handle Waco?
I don't know. I haven't looked into Waco.
Is he talking about like the 1993 siege of like Waco, Texas, with the fucking bat?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
He was on some like, man, they fucking went up in there with guns, civil liberty shit. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, he's very pro gun. He's probably pretty right wing. They got racist memes going around, but like, you know, they're also in their late teens.
That's right? Funny.
Okay, so they're just shit posters, you know. Mm-hmm. Anyway, these documents get into the hands of the Donbas Davushka network, which is even stranger.
Same
Donbas Davushka. Yeah, but Donbas Davushka is really a woman who lives in Washington State, who worked for the U.S. Navy for 13 years, and just has built her brand on being from Luhansk.
Oh wow.
And it's just been like, we gotta support the boys, we gotta support the Russians, yeah. And so she's built an online following with like, they've 75,000, 80,000 followers or some shit, you know, like between, you know, YouTube, they do the podcast on Spotify, they got Twitter, they got all the socials going. And this is like this whole social media movement of being like pro-Russia.
They got
they've sold merch and said they're gonna send that money to the front, which is illegal. They said they never did that, but they advertise it. So that's where the documents went eventually. They did a repost. And so then everybody found out about these documents. And rather than focusing on these documents and what that reveals and like, are we going to send more missiles to Ukraine now that we know Zelensky's trying to bump? Oh, quick note. Beijing has also outlined their red lines. If they're like, we're going to support Russia full scale, is if NATO weaponry gets used in the Russian mainland. So that's exactly what Zelensky wants to do. And so we really got to decide.
Why would we even be debating whether we want to send weapons there if that's like the Chinese red line? That's crazy.
Also,
this was the exact debate we were having before these documents leaked. It was exactly what was being debated.
Zelensky must know that. Well, I mean, I still want to hear more, but let me just ask this. This is gonna be rhetorical. I really feel like he would know that would be the case because one, like China was like Ukraine's like biggest fucking like export, like everybody is, but one is like he's got to know that like if communication got cut off with them since the war started, they've never met with Zelensky, that there's so much pressure on them from Russia to aid them that it would take one thing, right? Which is the most interesting thing, because I'm like, Zelensky would basically want China to enter this war from an arms race perspective and then I'm just like, that sounds crazy.
So my guess is that the intelligence says that was like early February he said that, right? Maybe that's why Xi was like, yo, I'm gonna go talk to the Ukrainians. Let's put out a cable here. You know, let's get on the phone, because my guess is the Chinese are spying on them too.
Okay. Oh, definitely.
They just needed to set the record straight. Zelensky, just so you know. Anyway, all that shit's going down, and in the meantime, the Pentagon refused to confirm or deny these stories. Although they mostly confirmed it because they're like, some of it seems fake. Like, and then they point to one document that seems fake. And it was all there was a Russian troop count of like how many people killed that was doctored down and released on Russian servers. So that's the only one that seems doctored out of 350 pages. But so besides that, though, you know, like they more or less confirmed it, and they've now charged this guy. They've arrested him. The thing is, no one knew who he was for like 10 days, and then the Washington Post and the New York Times were like fucking helping the FBI. Like the Washington Post got on, they interviewed his friend on Discord, and they described all the shit I'm telling you guys now. They did that and then released it to the public before the FBI had any of that. And then, not to be outdone, the New York Times was like, it's Jack Teixeira. That's who he is. We got it first. We're releasing his name first before they even arrested him.
How do you feel about that?
I feel really bad about it. Because, like, for me, I've always been, like, pro Snowden, Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange. Like, journalists have a duty to try to get information and protect their sources, right? Like, you want to keep your, you want to do your very best. If someone's going to go and leak something that's of the public interest, you really want to defend your source and say, like, hey, we want to hold the government to account.
Right.
Get them, you know, to tell the truth. We want the government to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And this kid caught, essentially, these documents catch the government in a lie about all this shit, saying, oh, Ukraine's going so well, when they're out of fucking bullets. You know, like, all these things that are going on that are for, oh, another really, really big one. Sorry, one more big thing from the leak. We have American special forces on the ground in Ukraine. That is confirmed through these documents. So we're there. You know, so if you're wondering, like, oh, how some of this is secret,
I did not know this.
Having U.S. troops in Ukraine, like, that's worth. You know, we never voted on that. That's confirmed. We're there.
We haven't.
Right. So they got caught, and then rather than, you know, reporting on the substance of these leaks and holding the government to account, they turned it all into this special interest story about who is this kid, and got him they actively got him arrested. Right. Now here's the thing. Normally with like I've heard Snowden talk at like conferences that I've been to, things like that I was just like amazed that he was a speaker, because even though he was telecomming in from Russia, like, such an amazing dude. You know, whether you like Julian Assange or not, like, they've broken stories that have proven war crimes throughout the world, including the U.S. drone strikes, things like that. Like, really important work. This kid did not do this to prove a point to the world. It was not to alert. It was to tell his friends on Minecraft. And then it broke, right? So it's like, how guilty is he? I don't know how to feel about that. Like, it's legitimately weird, because he definitely broke the classified aspect, but like, I commend Snowden for breaking the fact that it was classified and leaking it anyway. But he didn't leak it anyway. He just did it. His intent was not the best.
It's like a.
But also, I still want to fight for him. You know.
It's like a case of like workplace negligence on his part, almost. You know.
Totally.
Kind of thing you would get fired for, yes, but it's not like, necessarily in prison for, you know?
But it's like negligence that might have saved the Republic.
So the interesting thing too about that is that he technically is liable though for that, because and I'm just thinking about, so I had a security clearance with the State Department. I had two of them, one for my internship and then one when I was working doing climate analyst stuff and digital strategy stuff. So it was two different. The first clearance was basically the lowest clearance that you can get. So it didn't require like even like I had to send like a packet to them, but they didn't even interview me. They just sent me my clearance, and that one gave me access to all the email threads for the State Department. That weren't confidential. So it was all the morning telegrams, all this stuff that was being sent. So there was sensitive information that wasn't given to the public maybe a week or two prior, right? And I even remember when I was still doing a bit of work with them leading up, I believe it was in late January, when people were really saying, the State Department suggesting that, and this is stuff that I'm going to keep vague too, but it was prior to the Ukrainian invasion. I remember reading some of those channels and being like, holy shit, this looks crazy. That's all I'm going to say about that. But the point is, yeah, like this is stuff that you see if you're in government and if you're in intelligence, which kid, I mean, whether or not he should have been is a different question, you know. He obviously, his clearances were not correct. There was system negligence on that side. But the reason why I think he could be liable is because when you sign those documents for those clearances, you are sworn to secrecy on those. and that's why it's going to be a little chaotic for him, whether or not it's intent. It's the fact that he knew willingly that he was going to disperse that information. They can treat him like a spy, like a traitor, like
for sure.
Very intense things are going to be very Assange-like things that Will's alluding to are going to be put onto him by a team that's vested interest is to protect themselves and make him look like the sole perpetrator, when it was probably what we're going to be hearing is the negligence on the Pentagon's part, right? Which they obviously aren't going to take. They're not going to take responsibility for.
Well, it's so that's an important piece, but I think we need to take it a step further to dissect it. Like, as far as his liability goes, yeah, 100%. Snowden also 100% liable for what he did. Chelsea Manning 100% liable. They're all liable. Like Julian Assange, maybe not, right? He's a journalist. He just got his sources. He never actively, like that's the whole debate with that he's getting charged on with Chelsea Manning. Like, was telling her how to hack in and giving her advice on how to hack in, like akin to, aiding and abetting or conspiracy. But like, generally speaking, like, they're liable. But like with Edward Snowden, I'm like, fuck yeah, you're liable. You're like, thank God, like, you're a hero to the Republic. Thank God you said fuck you and you showed us like how far the NSA is spying on everyday Americans. I say, yeah, you're liable, but you're a hero. You should be free. Right. You should 100% should be pardoned. Like, I would say not guilty in a court of law if I was in the jury, because I think he did it public service. Whereas with Jack Teixeira, I think he did a public service on accident. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so like, I think it's really good that we have these leaks, but it's also like, I can't be like, it's like, like if you have like, I remember in a philosophy class I had, it's like, if you have a crazed dude who wants to go out and murder someone, and like he murders someone who's like kidnapping kids, and then he's like gonna go throw the guy's body in the trunk, and he opens up the trunk and like a bunch of kids pop out and they say like, you saved us, like, you're a hero. The cops, like, they put him on the front page of the newspaper, and it's like, so why'd you kill that guy? Like he's still guilty, right? He's still like not a good person, you know what I mean, for having, like, he had no idea the kids were in there, but like he did do he's a bad person who did a good thing, and like, how do you weight that in terms of the law? Well, the law doesn't give a fuck. They're just like, they view this as all bad, revealing state secrets, right? Mm-hmm. So, but even then, he was still motivated to prove the truth to his friends, just not to the public, because he wanted to honor the security clearance. He was just being sus, with these documents. But yeah, so that's a real debate, and it's worth getting into. But I want to do what the mainstream media is not doing and talk about the substance of these documents, what the fuck we actually learned, and how do you guys feel about the Ukraine situation, knowing like they want to escalate this into an offensive war where they're attacking Russia, knowing that there's no plans for peace for the rest of 2023, knowing Beijing's red lines, and then like, how do we feel about like us spying on the Koreans and trying to trick the Israelis? Those are some of the substantive things that we aren't actually getting discussed really.
I would say spying stuff, I don't really give a shit, because I think it's like par for the course. Like, everybody's spying on everybody, so like, I'm not gonna get like hung up on that. In terms of like what we learn about Ukraine, China's red lines, like, I think I obviously have like a should have like a pretty strong opinion there. Like, I think China getting involved in this war is tantamount to the beginning of World War III. I mean, it certainly poses that risk. I think it's a military confrontation that like the world is not ready for and will never be ready for. I wonder, like, again, like, how firm these red lines are. I'm sure like a lot of people are trying to do like some political calculus around that, right? Like trying to figure out like if we really cross these lines, is China really going to get involved here? You know, like does this leak affect that calculus at all? Because like China's revealed their red lines when before they were a state secret, you know, like or like they were an internal secret, so like they wouldn't face any like national embarrassment for not crossing those lines or like for not like stepping in once those lines are crossed, right? Like now that the lines are revealed, like China has their face on the line, you know, so if we do cross those lines, like China is in a position where they feel increased pressure to actually really like back up their talk, you know. Yeah, I mean the whole thing just like fills me with a sense of just like general anxiety that like I mean it's just like it like spikes the anxiety I've been feeling for the past like 5 months around this, or like I mean not like 5 months, like a like
Longer,
year, etc. like over this. But yeah, I mean like it's
it's intense.
Yeah, it's a terrifying prospect for sure.
Josh, I'm gonna respond to you in a second because I have a pushback on that. But
Okay.
So for Ukraine trying to get into Russia and bombing them, to me it like think about it. You're a country that's getting pummeled by a larger nation that's your neighbor, right, for a year. Probably the only thing you want to do is try to fucking cause some damage on their home front. Like
For
that's
sure.
probably your like that's your fucking that's like what you're obsessed with from a military perspective. So not surprising at all, right?
Yeah.
To be honest, like I don't know how they're gonna do it, because Russia's such a much larger front too. It just sounds incredibly unrealistic, but we're gonna have to see how that goes. The crazy thing is that if you think about the domino effect of what that means, and so I think that's gonna be a maybe the retort that I want to hear from you guys after I pose this question. But I'm gonna leave that to you, the domino effect, right, of what that means. Because Josh, you're saying this might be tantamount to World War III, and I'm thinking of it from like more of a proxy war perspective, and recognizing what superpowers are actually trying to do with this war. And I really think there's a better chance that the involvement of superpowers is only to instigate a little more of an annoyance to other superpowers, and to damage economies that they know are replaceable, and act like they actually care. And that's what the U.S. does for a living, right? We see that, right? Especially with this, it's like super apparent that we don't really give a fuck. We're using Ukraine as bait to kind of see what we can leverage against Russia, get an edge on them. It's like really that simple almost. I mean, from my perspective at least. Just sad, right? Because it's fucked up. Because like that's why I really feel for the Ukrainians. Because like they're really pawns in this play of ours. And so I think China's kind of entrance is to say, hey, what can we do to make the powers that we want to get an edge on? How do we make them squirm a little bit, right? I feel like they're in the driver's seat, and obviously like Putin and Xi are like pretty buddy, right? Like a lot of those countries on that side of the world view it almost as like this, like this line against, right, Western versus East, which is
almost
crazy,
an
right?
axis,
because,
if you will.
Yeah, right. I wasn't gonna use that word because I think it's tilted. Axis is tilted. The axis is tilted because from our perspective, we think of it as such a negative word, you know, but I'm not going to approach it that way.
So it's a line. But what is an axis? Huh?
Well, from a 4D perspective, it's actually
still a line.
No, but okay, push back on that, guys, or tell me your take. You know, is it that big of a deal? Right now, the last 5 minutes are me saying no, they're just fucking pushing some shit around. But could it be?
Personally, I don't think China getting involved is that big of a deal, only in the sense that I truly believe that Russia does not lose this war. You know what I mean? Like, Russia will use tactical nukes if they're really losing. And before they use tactical nukes, I think China will supply them with other options. You know, like if they're ever running out of supplies, if the Chinese are looking at the two options of like, okay, we sell you guys arms and we risk escalation, or you use the nuke and it's escalated and it's up. You know what I mean? Like, then they're probably gonna sell them the arms first anyway.
I mean, Russia using tactical nukes does not mean that they win. Maybe they like destroy Ukraine, but I mean that really would be some like World War III starting shit.
I mean,
you know?
yeah. To me, nukes and World War III are pretty much synonymous. Only because like it is like the equivalent of like an end time scenario where there's no going back from that in so many levels, and it's also never been done. So I would put it on that scale. But what Will is saying is that before that would happen, China would intervene. So it's not a likely scenario.
So it's just in general, it just highlights to me in general how it's like, look, there's so many steps before Russia's really losing this. You know, like right now, like the Russians, they just set up another draft law where it's like they haven't set up the next draft, but they said, listen, if we announce your name and we put it up on our website or whatever, then it's like a digital dragnet for you to be in the army. Like, we don't have to, you know, like how we have like servers, you know, like like if you get served for court, like that's how a draft was in Russia. Now it's just if we announce it, you're in. And so they say like after 20 days, if you're caught driving a car, we'll drag you in. You know, we'll just pick you up and we'll drag you in. If your bank accounts are gonna get frozen until you arrive. Jesus. You know, like they just turn off the lights for you in Russia. Right. You now have to, which is, you know, in a sense, I kind of assume they do that from the get-go, but legally they're taking those steps, which definitely implies they've got another draft coming, you know, and so they've got that. They've got China, you know, setting them up. They're making a bunch of ammo too. I mean, the Ukrainians have done incredibly, but it's like, it's so sad to hear like they're not gonna push for negotiations this year because it only ends one of two ways. Wars only end with one of the two sides losing, or with a negotiated settlement. And I'm gonna tell you now, the side that's gonna lose is not gonna be Russia, unless it's gonna be through post-nuclear war.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't like, I think it's sad. A year more, 2 years, whatever it might be, is always kind of like just because when it started, it was like, okay, like what is this gonna look like? Like, are we talking days? Remember at the start we were kind of like counting. It's been 3 weeks since the start of the invasion, right? So it's like now we're like, oh, it's not that kind of war. It's actually gonna be something that takes years of time, and so we're already learning that this isn't gonna be the year, which means much more toil, much more death. And yeah, I think what you're kind of alluding to is that it's not like a scenario like Afghanistan when we go in there and like they're just like, fuck y'all, you know, and like shit goes crazy, but at the end of the day, like you look at that war, how many people are gonna look at it and be like, we caught a dub there, America, right? It's same with Nam, right? It's not, you're saying like the small power in this against the large force, although we've seen so many of these kind of iterations, but this is a border one, which makes it crazier, right? This isn't going to end up with the little guy stepping up and saying, hey, you're not going to take our shit. It just doesn't look like that. But from like a U.S. perspective, from like even a European perspective, that's kind of like what they painted this as at the start. Oh, look at Ukraine, like they're so brave, and it's like, at what cost? Is like a year later, what does bravery really accomplish? Some part of me doesn't even know how to like accurately speak on it. One, because I would really want to know the perspective of like Ukrainian citizens, like historically people
they want to keep going, of course, and I don't blame.
Right. Yeah, and it's and like.
Go ahead.
Well, I just think to sum it up, it's not going to be one of those things where there's kind of like a David and Goliath ending to this.
Well, it's interesting insofar as like I don't want to discredit, like, so far it has been that, right? Like, it really has been David and Goliath here, for sure. Like, the Ukrainians have done incredibly well. No one thought it was going to be, it's been 14 months now, and they're just, the offensives that came in the fall were just so massive. They got huge depots of supplies, of Soviet supplies that they know how to use, as the Russians were forced to abandon them. They want to keep the fighting going, and it's getting, warm enough where they're really able to pick it up again. And they want to keep going, but the undeniable, like, it's been winter for the last, 3 months. And so the fighting kind of stopped because there's not as much fighting in winter. But the truth is, and I was thinking about this back in late summer, early fall, the better the Ukrainians do, the more they win the war, the more likely Russia uses a tactical nuke. Like, you can say, like, oh, you can't let them scare you like that, but, like, ultimately, if it comes down to it, if they're going to get pushed out of the entire territory, Russia, like, before they let Ukraine have the Donbass, they're going to nuke the Donbass. You know what I mean? Like, they don't really, I for sure, they'd rather not have a nuked, like, they'd rather, like, if they're going to control the territory, they don't want it nuked, because it's like they don't want to preside over nuked territory. But if they're going to lose it, if the Ukrainians are going to take it back, nuh-uh, man. Like, why? Well, then they got nothing to lose.
Here's my problem with that is that, like, I agree to some extent, but I think Russia knows that, like, to use a tactical nuke is to, like, turn a proxy war right now into a realized war. Like, once they launch that nuke, I don't know if, like, the US and Europe can stand and support from behind anymore. And that I think that's kind of the crux of the question, right? Is like, will this proxy war end as a proxy war, or will this proxy war will expand and then develop and play out as a realized war? And I think that's, like, the scary question. And, like, I think all parties involved would like to keep it a proxy war because it's still a proxy war right now. At least, like, right now, like, it's still a proxy war. So, like, we have to assume that everyone is, like, hesitant to bring it to that point, But, like, yeah, I guess, like, the question is, like, what is the breaking point? Like, what is the straw that's gonna break that back? And I wonder if, like,
yeah. But one of the things that could do it, man, it's long-range missiles hitting the mainland of Russia. That's one of those things that could really turn that tide.
No, for sure, I agree with that. And I think, like, but I think, like, here, I'm gonna say one thing. Like, I think Amar had an interesting point earlier where he was saying, like, we knew all of this was happening, right? Like, we knew that Ukraine, like, it's obvious, it's common sense that, like, Ukraine would want to send long-range missiles into the Russian mainland, right? Like, that's just, like, of course they would, And,
well,
like,
again, this is the exact point. Sorry, go ahead.
I just mean, like, in our position as an ally right now, like, of course they're going to ask us if we can supply those missiles. And of course we're going to play around and pretend like we will, and, like, actually, like, maybe to some extent, like, really float that question internally. But, like, how much of that is gestural? Like, even with these leaks coming out, like, we still haven't supplied those missiles, right? Like, even if we do, I mean, if we do, I think Ukraine uses them. But like, I think like I think right now, like, we haven't learned anything that really exists out of the realm of what we thought was gesturally possible, you know, and even probable. So the leaks, I think they reveal a lot about like the real situation on the ground. I don't know whether they're a net positive or a net negative for like our like handling of this situation, because this stuff is delicate, and honestly, I think maybe it's better handled in secret, but I really don't want to be pressed on that because I don't know how to defend myself there, you know?
Yeah. So I just want to jump in again, just because it's like, just to give the context of the debate. This is an article from Politico from February 13th, 2023. And the title is, U.S. tells Ukraine it won't send long-range... Oh, because it has too few to spare, actually. That's not the one I needed. But U.S. to provide long-range missiles. Again, this was the debate that was being had in... Oh, it looks like we did send some in February. So maybe that debate's kind of moot.
But maybe these are different kinds of missiles, right? I don't know.
Yeah, so, yeah. That's the thing. It's very technical stuff, right?
One thing I will also say is we have to give some sort of credit to, like, the former Soviet Union. I mean, they've been dealing with mutually absurd destruction tactics for, like, half a century. So they're almost like the fail-safe country to, like, be like, oh, fuck you guys suck my dick, we have nukes and we're not going to use them. Like, they're like, for them to be using it on their fucking neighbor that, like, they think is their own, like, you belong to us and all this shit. It's like, I mean, that would be like the ultimate irony. But again, nothing's out of, I don't, it's not even appropriate to dismiss things, but the reason why I want to kind of temper some of those, and maybe we're kind of moving past this point, but I'll just say it as like a kind of conversation ender for me, because I felt the tension of all of us. Like, holy shit, is this the end? But like, come on, like that's the point of nukes. Like, it's felt like this since their inception, right? So, maybe, you know.
For sure.
All right, should we go on to the real bomb of the week?
Jesus Christ.
I think, well, okay, yeah, I feel comfortable going there. If you do, I feel like maybe also if we want to just take a pulse check on just like, because this is kind of like the international politics side of the discussion. We didn't discuss Sudan at all. Maybe we can cover that next week if we just.
I didn't know there was anything to cover. So
there's, there's some crazy shit going on. I think, you know, like, as we kind of navigate there's a lot of heady topics that I'd love to just be able to dive into. So
for sure,
let's keep it going. Let's keep a monitor on leaks, Ukraine, all these things, and just try to still understand it, because there's a lot of heady things at play.
For sure.
So how are we feeling though? Free Jack Teixeira? Yes? No? Free him?
Well, I saw a selfie of him, and I was like,
a douchebag.
Yeah, I saw the selfie and I was like, fuck this guy. But
I think he was playing with fire, man. He's playing with fire. He's a little kid. I hope he doesn't get life in prison for it or anything. You know, like, I hope his life isn't ruined over it.
I mean,
but he did a stupid thing.
Like, basically, this guy was doing basically what we're doing, like,
with the documents.
Like, yeah, like, to me, like, it's like this new level of like this is kind of what you get. Also, like, and I don't mean that aimed even at him. I just mean that at our current situation, right? like how online we are as a generation. Like, it was bound to happen this way. And like, one thing I read was like how like, well, you sent us that crazy ass YouTube video with those guys talking about how like this means that there will be a lot more surveillance, or like this is an invitation to just like
all of our shit getting took to another level.
Like you think your Discord is safe, you think your Call of Duty lobby, your Fortnite lobbies are safe, like, and it's funny because like that's like the closest I felt to just being like, no, you can't take that from me.
Next time
like,
we're gonna find like leaks showing up like in-game chats. Like they're just gonna like send the leak like line by line in like the Minecraft like proxy chat.
But that should be upsetting to you because like imagine your PS5 being tapped. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
right.
That shit's gonna get tapped.
It's so funny because that's like where the leaks are gonna come from, though. You know, if anywhere.
It's all gamers, right?
Right. It's just gamer shit.
This audio is getting tapped, like for sure. Like it's a wrap, and I'm kind of like,
maybe.
Well, that sucks. That sucks.
That does
totally.
suck. Yeah, that stuff I really. Who don't like that? I mean, imagine if we grow this channel out a bit and there are feds in our fucking Discord, in our fucking Twitch chat. We got feds in the chat.
That's the dream, actually.
That's the dream. I feel like if we get feds in the chat, we know we made it. Like, no, for real though. Like, it does kind of like, because they were even saying things like, what are some of the secure apps like Signal, Telegram?
iMessage is secure also, supposedly. They encrypt their message server side.
Even WhatsApp, they were saying like we want to get better controls to get into some of those, including Discord and all, like just a Fed presence on the web, which I guess in a sense like is weird because I already thought they were doing that. So, and maybe they will without really getting permission. Maybe they could just do it. But
it's about I think it's really about how much money and then technology, and it would have to be I mean, Josh would probably know more. But Josh, let me ask you a question. Like, to get into an encrypted system like WhatsApp, for example, would they just have to throw so much money at their intelligence? And
there's no way. No, I mean, like once it's encrypted in the database, like people at the company can't decode it. You know, it's a wrap.
So this was a whole thing.
So how would they tap, like what would be a feasible scenario for them to lock into encrypted scenario or places? Is there?
Honestly, I don't know. Like they would have to like
it'd be about.
They would have to like be like screen recording or some shit, or like they would have to like see your chat, like, or like intercept the messages or something. You know, like I don't know. I actually don't know. I genuinely don't know.
It's like creating a backdoor, or you know, like.
Or they would have to get like some permission to like get like some like like a backdoor like surveillance like channel, right? Something like that.
Do you guys remember the history of that, like the whole backdoor debate that happened after San Bernardino?
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
So just I guess just for the audience, like that was the whole thing where Tim Cook wrote an open letter saying like the FBI has asked me to backdoor the iPhone. And I'm not gonna do it.
I remember the conversation, not like the impetus.
Backdoor, it's over.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Huh?
I remember the conversation, not the impetus. But it's funny because like Tim Cook, in the same breath, like is like allowing China to own like the databases that host all of like the iMessages that people send in China, and like they're not encrypting their messages. You know, like they don't subject those messages to the same encryption.
That's because they wouldn't have iMessage in China.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Exactly. And so the U.S., you know, it's scary that the U.S. would try to crack down in that same way. I mean, ultimately, where'd my thought go? Fuck it, it's gone.
Well, one thing that I was thinking is that if companies decide to, I mean, like WhatsApp's whole marketing scheme right now is like those commercials where it's like, yeah, nobody can see your fucking messages.
Dude, same with Apple, right? Yeah, like they had that whole campaign last year about security. Like we are security. So we are privacy.
If like any of these companies do have a deal or do some backdoor shit, they're fucked because the market is going to turn against them because people are going to like start being like, oh my god, this isn't a safe thing. I mean, honestly, like I think that's why iMessage would be the only one that has leverage because they're such a kind of like they're like the big bad that everybody wants. So if they ended up not having encryption, people would still probably use it.
I remember what I was going to say. All right. This actually has to do with what you're talking about. So this is the San Bernardino shooter used the Snowden docs, some of the leaks from the Snowden docs, to find out how he could encrypt his iPhone securely enough that the feds couldn't break it. And that's why the feds, for the first time, had to go to Apple to ask them for the backdoor.
He did his homework.
And they said no. He did his homework based off of the Snowden docs.
Yeah.
It's just sad that like
it all ties in.
it's just sad too. Like that's like the most like
nefarious way to
terrifying
use
scenario,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Just in general, I think that again, like we talked about this.
That's the price of
previously,
freedom,
but
though.
Again, these are all well, and that's also the cost of a mental health crisis too. You know what I'm saying? Like, you like just like that. All that shit is fucking. That's terrible. You know what I mean? Like, none of that shit should be happening. It's fucking. This sucks, dude. Cause like that dude went ahead and just killed some motherfuckers because he like caught some docs, you know, from Snowden. Like, and this guy, yeah, I rock with Snowden too. Like, he's a cool cat.
He really rocked with him.
In this world, like, yeah, it's fucking crazy, man. Okay, well let's.
Wait, hold on. I wanted to get back to Will's question because I don't think we quite answered it. What was our friend's name again? The leaker.
Jack Teixeira. It's hard. It's hard to say it.
Jack Teixeira. Teixeira. Okay. Yeah. So you asked like, do you think that he's guilty or not? I posit a different question, which I think will be revelatory of our answers, which is if you had those documents in hand, would you have leaked them?
No.
Oh, on 10 for sure.
I don't plan on going to jail.
I wouldn't have.
So
I wouldn't have done it.
I'm just not gonna go to jail. So it's like anything that would put me in jail, I just won't do because, that would fucking suck. Jail
I thought you loved Ali, man.
No,
what about draft dodging? What about like conscientious abstention from war?
Again, I would do nothing that could end it that could put me in prison. I would, to be honest, like war is. I'm a pacifist for real. Like I'm a real pacifist. So it would be like an absolute hell for me, right? Because I don't believe in killing people. So it would just ruin my soul. I don't think I would make it back. Not because I wouldn't be good at it, but because I think I would be so conflicted about the idea of killing another human being. But
like the other Joker.
Yeah, just being real, just being super real. Like I have no I'm going through my whole life without shooting a gun. Like I believe that because I don't want to have that power. Because it's like it's a pillar of mine, right? But another pillar of mine is to make sure that I don't end up in a cell. And I just don't want that for myself because it's just not a life that I plan to live. So I don't know. No.
I wouldn't do it either.
I believe. Oh.
Yeah. I say I don't.
Damn.
I wouldn't do it either. I don't know if it's for lack of courage, i.e. like fear of prison, or if it's for like just ambiguity about the effect of this thing, whether it's like actually like a net positive or a net evil. You know, I would have a hard time like reckoning with like the fallout from it, you know, deciding whether like this was like something that like did something good for people or for us or for like the geopolitical situation or like threw us into a spiral or like was just neutral and then like I'm just like fucking myself for no reason, you know.
Well, why would you do it? And how would you get away with it?
I wouldn't get away with it. I would get caught, man. For sure.
You would have the mugshot with the lo-fi girl.
Intelligence, bro. Yeah, man. I mean, if I wish I could be Snowden level.
Why don't you just go to Korea? They'll protect you. They're getting spied on. Leak and dip, and just.
That's what Snowden did. That's what Snowden did. But it's also like he planned it. He planned it very carefully.
Yeah.
Because they were on his ass immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd make an attempt, but just again, like Snowden. You don't assume you're getting out. You assume you're probably gonna get caught.
I mean, you're
right?
6'5". Like it's pretty
I believe there is no greater honor on God's earth than to air your own country's dirty laundry and reveal it to the public. There's nothing better. The Republic does not function without this type of work. Like I'm thinking about like the Pentagon papers from Vietnam. And like the the people who were able to figure out that we were like dropping chemicals on Cambodia, right? Like, this shit needed to come out. Like,
For
I don't
sure.
give a shit. I don't give a shit if I would go to jail or not. I mean, maybe. Like, I hope I would have the courage to do it. But like,
I'm more
you
of
ask
a
me, like,
Fed than
would
you
I?
are.
Like, I'm like, I just want it. I just want to. There's nothing I'd rather be remembered for than to be a leaker.
Yeah.
Man,
just a
for
fan.
real. For real.
All right. You gotta know who you are.